Everyone wants to live an inspired life, yet so many people search for happiness following the footsteps of peers and taking advice from people who have different values and outcomes to which they're searching. There are people born into wealth, graduated from the best universities in the world, and there are people who have none of that and yet are living extraordinary lives full of fulfillment and reward. The purpose of this podcast is to share insights and strategies that allow you to question the status quo and think freely, so you can design your life and be who you want to be. We get one life. Time is our most valuable asset. I believe that when we're free and able to focus on meaningful work, we become better human beings. This is Always Free, and I'm your host, Jason Graystone.
Welcome to the leading podcast for financial empowerment and wealth creation. Subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can connect with Jason on social media and subscribe to the Jason Graystone YouTube channel for weekly videos. Don't forget to also subscribe to the weekly newsletter to receive frequent educational content and action steps to help you design your life so you can be who you want to be. For news on all future events and updates, go to jasongraystone.com.
Well, welcome back to the podcast, guys. Hope you had a good week so far. If this is the first time you're tuning in, this is the number one podcast for financial empowerment and wealth creation. And if you're listening for the first time, stop here, go back to episode 1 and start there. That's all I can say. You're going to get much more value from this podcast from listening to episode 1. But if you're here every single week without fail, maybe you've binged 20 episodes in the last week. And if you're here and you're in that situation, then I really appreciate you tuning in again. And I'm so glad to hear that you're getting so much value from this podcast. So this week, I kind of wanted to just go off track a little bit to go into a kind of mindset type topic where that's very relevant because, you know, in terms of building wealth, it takes courage to first of all choose financial freedom, but it also one of the biggest limiters or the biggest kind of governors on whether or not you achieve your goals or achieve financial freedom is down to kind of the limits in our mind. So things like shame and guilt and, fear and things like that really stop us going forward. And one thing that came up this week that I was talking about with my son was judgment. Okay. And I posted this little story on my Instagram and it got so much engagement. I got so many instant messages coming up from it. And I thought I would share with you kind of the point that I was getting across in that story. Okay, so I had a conversation about judgment with my son, and people either feel like you've been judged. Okay, so if you feel like you've been judged, or where people specifically think that you're judging them. Okay, and I've spoken in the past about people not wanting you to succeed and things like that. And if you go back to I think it's episode 4 of the podcast, I did a whole episode on that to stop that holding you back. But this is more about judgment. For instance, you might have been around a group of people, okay, and at first it seems like you've all got the same goals and the same ambitions, and then you make a decision that you're going to go after it, and you just go full blown and you go after it, right? And they say, "Yep, I'm going to go after it as well." And maybe they kept saying, they keep coming up with things like, well, when I've got a bit more money, I'll do it. Or, that's what I'm going to go after. That's the result that I want. And I'm going to do it one day. And for whatever reason, you just go after it. Okay. And there comes a point where you start to get results. Okay. And the more you keep moving forward towards your goal and your mission, and you start to get results and you build momentum. Okay. And then them results just become a daily thing and a weekly thing and a yearly thing, right? And you keep growing and growing and growing and growing. So when you first started talking about it, you both had the same goal and you kept talking about the same things, but you've taken action, okay? And you're getting some results now because, you're going and get the results and they've stayed a bit stagnant. They haven't done what you've done. So they've literally stayed the same and they haven't got to where they want to be. Okay. Now, what they usually do at that point is they kind of they look up to you, right? So there can be a little bit of resentment that sets in, but not towards you. It's really because they know they had the same choice, and they had the same, the same opportunities. All right, and they normally start to look up to you, and as a result of looking up to you, what they do usually is drop their self-worth. Okay, so they'll drop their self-worth, and they'll start using negative language patterns towards themselves when they're around you, right? Or they're kind of in fear of what you'll think of them. And when they're in your company, they'll usually use negative language towards themselves, like, oh yeah, I got this the other day, but it's not as good as yours. Or yeah, I achieved this, but it's only a little one, nothing compared to what you're doing or what you've done. And they'll kind of belittle themselves, and they'll start putting themselves down. This is very, very common in families. Okay, they'll start putting themselves down, and they'll put you on this pedestal. They'll look up to you, and they'll start saying you're so successful and all this kind of thing, right? And that's a danger for the person who's going after it as well. This happened to me when I was about 28 years old. I was getting some decent results, and everyone kind of had this, kept saying, you're successful, well done. And I became complacent because I wasn't getting around people who had, I wasn't where I wanted to be. But I started to get fat, right? I started to get fat in the kind of, using the metaphor of getting fat. I was literally getting fat as well, but I was getting complacent, and I just needed to mix it up, get around people who still had what I wanted to go after, and so that I could strive a bit more rather than become complacent. But that's what they do, and they kind of look up to you, and they start kind of lowering their self-worth. And it might not be just, vocal, it might just be internally as well. And they're telling themselves that they're a failure or a letdown, right? And just because you keep going and going and going and getting better and better and better results in your life, right? There comes this point where they feel like if they're in your presence, they're being judged. Okay? So first of all, you need to understand that you can't actually judge someone, as in a physical, like you can't have that effect on someone. A judge, you can't judge someone. You can only be judged. You can only decide to be judged. And that comes from, someone saying something or feeling a certain way that is tapping into something you don't love about yourself. So I'll give you an example. Let's just say that there's a social group of kids, okay, and one of them is really, really, really skinny. All right, he's really skinny, and all the kids are kind of doing fat jokes, right? And they're doing the fat jokes, and the skinny kid won't care. He's not going to care if you're doing fat jokes. He could actually call the skinny kid fat, and he literally wouldn't care. He wouldn't feel judged at all. However, if there was a larger kid in the group who was unhappy with his weight at the time and had a bit of a complex about his weight because he didn't love it about himself. He wasn't happy being overweight, and he wasn't happy with how he looked. Then when the kids started doing fat jokes, that kid might start to get a bit hot, sweaty, start feel like they're judging him, start feel like all the jokes are aimed towards him, feel like any minute now it's going to be geared towards him, and he might be triggered, right? The same thing will happen no matter what the situation you're in, okay? You'll start to feel inferior if you're not living to your truest values and you're happy with yourself and you love yourself. If there's anything that you don't love about yourself, you'll see it as, a trigger, and you'll feel like you're being judged. So in my previous example, right, when the person starts to be in the presence of the guy that went after it and just smashed it, they'll start to feel like they're judged because they're not where that person is. Okay, and what they'll do is they'll start to think, oh, that person thinks that they're too good for us or whatever. But in actual fact, the person's acting no different, right? They're just doing, that is just what they're telling themselves. And they're deciding that they're going to be judged. They're going to feel judged. They're allowing themselves to be judged. Now, here's the kicker, right? I'll explain to you two huge ironies in this whole situation. First of all, the person that doesn't take action, okay, normally doesn't get to where they want to be because they're obsessed with pleasing other people, right? They live in the value system of other people and allow other people to project their opinions onto them. They live to please other people. And in that whole process, that's trying to avoid being judged. So it's ironic, right? And that leads me on to the second irony, which is the only way that you can live in other people's judgment or not progress to where you want to be is if you believe that there is good and bad, right? And you take one side and you chase good all the time. People that make it, people that get results and start, getting serious results and moving forward, they embrace both. They don't believe in judgment. They just understand that there's both support and challenge and good and bad, and it's both the same thing, right? And, everything is there for a particular reason, and they embrace it. That's why they move up. They move towards their goals. The only way they can grow is to embrace both sides and not try to please everyone. Because the whole time you're trying to please people is so ironic, because it's keeping you there, right? It's keeping you where you are, looking up to people, trying to please them, which is causing you to self-doubt. So when I say the message of this podcast, be who you want to be, right? And spend a lot of my time and effort trying to help people achieve the life that they want, to be free and flexible and make decisions and inspire them to live a life that's inspiring to them. This is what it means. It means going after what it is you want in life and not trying to keep everyone happy. You're here for yourself. No one else is going to care about what you did in your life when you're on your death's door. All right? You'll end up with regret if you don't go after what you want in life. So when I talk about being always free is a state of mind. It's being able to make your own decisions that are aligned with your values and not looking up to other people, and understanding that we own every single trait, okay? And we can, balancing your emotions, taking the good with the bad, understanding that they're both there for a reason, embracing both and going after it. So you might have a little social situation where you've got a little social group and, you went after your goals, okay? And the people that just are now bitching about you. The rest of the group kind of kept each other where they are because, every time someone tried to break out, they pulled them back because they didn't want to have to go and do something and feel inferior. So they kind of kept this group back, but you broke out. Okay, and now they might be bitching about you, right? They might look up to you and they might call you a judger, right? And this isn't just in business, by the way. This is I know plenty of females, which I went over in my podcast about, they go and start losing weight, right? And then the social group starts to say, don't lose any more. And then they start bitching. And then they start saying, oh, she thinks she's too good, or, they think they're too good for us. And they feel like they're being judged by the person. But all the person's done is go and achieve what they want to achieve. All right. And now, because they decide not to go out and eat loads of crap food and drink loads of, alcohol and all the rest of it, that the friends feel like they're judging, that person's judging them for doing that. So they end up avoiding them. They end up distancing them from their friendship group. But they're creating the judgment, right? They're creating the judgment, which leads to a third irony. And the third irony is all successful people want people to succeed. Okay, so the person that goes and gets the result will happily hold their hand out and pull others up behind them. And when you speak to a person who's going after it, they're energized. Okay, and the ironic thing of all of this is the fact that the person you feel is judging is furthest from judgment. They don't even believe in judgment. They just embrace both sides. The only people that are being judged are the people that actually decide to believe that they're being judged and feel judged. And anyway, the reason I started talking about this with my son is because he got a comment from someone who said something along the lines of, you've got nothing to worry about because your dad's successful, which really, really pulled this story nicely together and all the irony, because people that believe happiness comes from living in the shadows of others are the ones that are never going to be happy. Happiness only comes from loving yourself, and you, right, only do that by going and empowering yourself. If you're unhappy with your weight and someone calls you fat or something like that, accept it as an indicator, see if it triggers you. If it does, that is an internal indication, like a warning mechanism to say, well, hold up here, you're not happy about that, you don't love yourself there, you better go and do something about that. 5 years ago, you said you was going to go and do something in your business or, start a side hustle or whatever. Oh yeah, you said you was going to have loads of money one day, right? Well, you haven't done that, and you might start thinking, did I do everything that I could have done? And if you're looking up to someone who is going after their goals and getting the results they want, you're going to start saying, did I do everything that I could have done to get where I want to be? Or actually, is it even important to me? right? Am I looking up to someone else? Do I actually want what they've got? I know I'm going off in a little bit of a tangent here, but I know there's a lot of people, right, listening to this, or people who are in this situation where the biggest reason that they don't get what they want in life is because they live in the shadows of other people. And if you're a parent listening to this, okay, before you decide to start pushing your kids into a certain job or projecting values onto them, give yourself a minute to think about what's important to them and how relevant what you're telling them to do is to them and their values. Okay, many of you know that one of my big drivers is I was going to put myself in a position where my kids didn't have to fall into a job, so they could just start paying us rent and get a job for money and all that kind of thing, right? I wanted to have the support and the backing and the wisdom to help them, guide them, and figure out what it is they love doing and then help them in that direction. And I got a message from someone saying, well, don't you want your sons to look up to you? And my answer is no, absolutely not. Right? I see this quite a lot where a lot of dads or parents want their kids and they want them to look up to them and be their hero, right? They want their kids to look up to them as their hero, which essentially means you want them to look up to you and live in your shadows. So my advice would be, if your kid's looking up to you and they think that you're their hero, okay, and they might even start feeling a bit judged, right, because they're not living up to your expectations, well, that's because you've created that hero in the first place. It would be wise to then go and tell them to bring you back down to earth, right? Basically, just get them to write a list of all the things you're not good at, all the places you've failed in life, all the times you've failed in life, where you've been horrible or you've failed or you've kind of missed a birthday or missed something, and get them to write a big list. If they've got you up on this pedestal, get them to bring you back down. You don't want them looking up to you because that's what causes depression. It causes them to feel inferior, and we don't want that. So get them to write a big list until they bring you back down to the ground equal with them. And most parents won't do that because they want their kids to look up to them and they want to keep their kids down, whilst they look up to you as their hero. Well, that can be the startings of trapping them into living in people's shadows. And that's how most people end up. So you might have heard the saying, never meet your heroes, right? And what that means is you don't meet your heroes because when you meet your hero, you've already got them on that pedestal. You've only seen one side that you've decided to believe exists in them, okay? And all the other sides, you've got them on this platform and all the other sides are missing. And you only see that one particular side of your hero. So when you meet them and you realize they're just the same as any other human being and they've got every single trait, okay, and sometimes they're nasty, sometimes they're selfish, sometimes they're angry, sometimes they're in it for themselves, just like everyone else, right? You'll realize that, it's not the person I thought it was, and it'll upset you. And there's a story about Christian Bale, the actor, when he was on set, okay, he's a method actor, and he was in his current role, and he had a bad day or whatever, and he flipped out on set. The guy had a go at someone, and although he was many people's hero at the time, at that point, he'd thrown a wobbly. People saw the other side of him. And the people choosing to only see that one side of him in the first place, well, that day, of course, he completely fell off the stool. It was like, oh no, he's a complete asshole, right? He's an idiot. Again, it's the people that believe in judging good and bad, okay? It's those people. It's the same people. They're the ones that get swung around by that whole emotion. Another example is Ellen, right? Ellen, who's known as the Be Kind lady, okay, recently was getting some stick in the papers because people had seen another side to her, and it's only because she's decided to display that side and hide half of herself, and people have just been kind of infatuated with this unrealistic one side of Ellen, that when they find out that she's a normal human being, all of a sudden they take the other side, and she's this kind of devil woman. It's just crazy. So, yeah, I've lost count the amount of times that I've told my sons not to look up to me. Don't look up to me. Be who you want to be, okay? Do what you want to do. Go after what you want to do. And what I do is completely different to your life. I'm no better than you, and I say that frequently to both of my sons. So, bit of a tangent, guys. I wanted to just kind of share that with you because it got a lot of feedback on my social. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'd love some comments. Please leave a review on iTunes if you feel compelled to do so. And reach out to me on social, J_Graystone on Instagram, Jason Graystone on Twitter. And you can go and join my private Facebook group, which is tearsoffreedom.com/mastermind. And if you just let us know that you heard about it through this podcast, you'll get access into the group. So that's it for this week, guys. Have a great rest of your day and weekend, and I'll see you then.
For news on all future events and updates, go to jasongraystone.com.